Canada is full of freeloaders, and I am not just talking about our government officials, although we will be talking about them too. We are seeing a rise in tenants scamming landlords across Canada, and a lot of that is due to, you guessed it, government incompetence. Then we are seeing global agencies start to call out Canada, calling us freeloaders as well, not taking us seriously, both from our defense spending and then also from our lack of production when it comes to our natural resources and commodities. Right now, Canada has the potential to step up and be a global powerhouse, and we are getting laughed at. We're going to cover a lot of interesting things in today's video. Let's get into it.
So let's go downstairs then, huh?
Yeah. At Stéphane Poquet's Beaches restaurant, he shows us something you might not expect. Past the bar, dining tables, and kitchen.
So here's my team, the kitchen team there working. And here is where I go.
And down the basement stairs, his home.
So everything you see is piled up here. And here my rabbit hole, my bunk bed.
For the last 5 months, he's been living in
What?
the basement, amid tools and restaurant equipment, sleeping in a makeshift bed, hanging clothes wherever he can.
That's a death trap, right? We can all say that that's a death trap. That's super illegal. I can't believe he's putting this out publicly because that's very illegal, but whatever.
Getting work done at his cluttered desk.
You know, I worked so hard for 25 years to own this restaurant, and then suddenly I'm stuck here sleeping in the basement. It's not home.
Poquet does own a home, a unit in this condo near Cabbagetown. He's been renting it out but needed to move back in after he and his ex-partner sold their house. But a much-delayed landlord and tenant board decision has left him in limbo. At the beginning of March 2023, he gave his tenant an own use eviction notice with 5 months to find a new place and filed an application with the LTB. 7 months later, the case was finally heard, but adjourned until January. Poquet.
That's so classic of the landlord-tenant board. So a lot of people don't know this. Like, everybody thinks, oh, landlord-tenant board and the tenants who are there, they're getting punished by these big, giant landlords. I can't speak entirely to this, but it sounds like this guy owns one property that he wants to move into. This isn't some giant conglomerate landlord. This is a single guy who has one place and he just wants to move in. And it took him 7 months to get a hearing that's just get in front of the adjudicators, and it's still not resolved.
Has been waiting for a decision ever since. The LTB says decisions are typically rendered within 30 days of the last hearing. Poquet has been waiting for more than 130 days.
Nothing's been
One of the top worst government organizations for sure.
done, no result, no date, nothing. We've been phoning, complaining, like emailing. I feel let down. That's what the word I would feel let down. By the government,
Jeepers, that
definitely.
looks crazy.
Last fiscal year, the LTB received more than 73,000 applications. At the end, there were more than 53,000 unresolved cases. The latest
What is that math-wise? Like 30% of the cases got solved, and then the rest of them are going completely unsolved? What? Unresolved, I should say.
available data shows it's been taking longer for cases to be decided. In 2022, it took an average of 278 days for a decision to be made from the time the application was filed, 5 times longer compared to 2018. Poquet's case has taken 450 days and counting.
That's
The Landlord Tenant Board is failing Ontarians.
Kathy Laird is with a group that keeps tabs on the province's tribunals. She says there's no reason a decision should take longer than 30 days.
It doesn't matter the complexity. They're supposed to know the law. It's the job of the Landlord and Tenant Board to hear the evidence and assess it and render a decision.
Tribunals Ontario says it's chipping away at the backlog and that the case count has dropped each month so far this year, and it expects that progress to continue. The Ministry of the Attorney General says it's spending $6.5 million on appointing more adjudicators and staff and providing training to ensure that cases are dealt with more efficiently.
So, two things. One, the landlord-tenant board actually does protect tenants. So if the landlords are doing something illegal or against the rules, that will be enforced. What's happening right now is tenants know they can abuse the system and get away with not paying, and it will take all this time, and the recourse is so difficult. And to the fact that we're now spending more money for the LTB, it's like, if we're going to do that, let's cut CRA bodies and put that over to LTB, because this is happening in Ontario, but that's not exclusive to Ontario. It's happening in provinces all across Canada. This simple contract law, how can it take 450 days? Nuts.
A year ago, we were looking at a 10-month wait, and now we're around 4 months.
This longtime paralegal says while there's still a backlog, she's seeing cases get resolved quicker.
I'm still dealing with files, some tenant files for 2022. We're just kind of getting to those ones now, and certainly the 2023s, but they're working hard to clear the backlog.
Poquet's tenant has continued to pay rent and doesn't have to leave unless the LTB decides in Poquet's favor. He thought the basement abode would be temporary, never expecting the decision to take this long, which is why he hasn't rented a place on a monthly basis. Plus, he says,
I should not have to do that. I should be allowed to move to my property.
Okay, I agree you should be allowed to move to your property, but you are risking your life to not rent. That's wild. And unless maybe he can't afford it, I don't know. So I'm a real estate agent in London, Ontario. Reach out to me in the link below if you want to work with me or my team all the way across Canada. But the reason I mentioned that on this specifically is this guy's fortunate enough that these people have continued paying rents. The amount of stories that I hear about people who don't have tenants who can continue paying rent and have to wait 400 days, entire years, all these things, that's where it's nuts, because you're not protected. And that's just a single person who's going to lose the property due to the tenants not paying it. And it's just an abuse of the situation, and they know the rules. So yes, I think this guy needs to probably rent a place if it's not going to be resolved. That's on him because he's risking his life. Speaking of paying the bills that you owe, we have this video how the G7 is judging Canada. They're thinking we're freeloaders. They're not taking us seriously when it comes to our potential contributions. And then, of course, our commodities production. Let's get into it. This is a very important watch, I think. It's stuff we talked about.
A top economic group is warning Canada could soon face diplomatic isolation if it does not step up its defense spending to meet NATO's benchmark target. CBC's Murray Brewster has more, including how much Ottawa would have to spend to get there.
Talk about an uncomfortable moment.
Canada spends about 1.4% of its GDP on defense. There are, I think, only 5 countries in NATO's 32 that spend less, including Belgium and Luxembourg. How can Canada be a serious partner to the U.S. in every sense if it's not a serious military power?
Well, Matthew, have you read our last defense policy update?
Very, very closely, yes, of course.
The Liberal government has been getting a lot of that when it comes to defense spending, from allies and now at home. One of the country's leading economic voices, the Business Council of Canada, writing the Prime Minister, warning that the failure to produce a plan to meet NATO's defense spending target of 2% of GDP ahead of next month's summit in Washington will have consequences, including diplomatic isolation in both security and economic partnerships.
Yeah, but again, why are we getting bullied by another? Like, I've seen your guys' comments, and a lot of us don't want to be part of these stupid global organizations, you know, the WEF, NATO. We want to be partners, but let's just trade with them. Let's be productive enough where they want to work with us. They almost have to work with us, and we'll get into that.
The calling out included a recent bipartisan letter from U.S. lawmakers demanding Canada meet its pledge to hit the NATO target.
And if we can see a path towards 2% that's credible, that will go a long way towards strengthening our defense relationship.
I also love that America pretty much benefits the most because we're going to be using all of their weapons manufacturers.
Ottawa is investing in defense, saying its latest defense policy will get Canada to 1.76% of GDP by the end of the decade, and that more money is coming once projects are costed and approved.
I'm convinced that we can be on a path to 2%.
To meet the NATO spending target, however, Ottawa would have to spend about $64 billion a year on defense, double what's planned for this year's budget.
So we're already in a $40+ billion deficit, and then we would have to add on an additional over $30 billion. Okay.
Aside from the fiscal aspect of doubling the defense budget, there is deep political skepticism. Defense Minister Bill Blair recently said it's hard to convince Cabinet and Canadians that meeting the pledge is a worthy goal. Murray Brewster, CBC News, Ottawa.
For more on this, we are joined now by Perrin Beatty, who wrote an open letter to the Prime Minister urging Canada to step up internationally. He is the President and CEO of the Canadian Chamber of Commerce and the former Minister of both Foreign Affairs and National Defence. We reach him tonight in Vancouver. Mr. Beatty, thanks for being here.
Glad to be with you.
Where do you think Canada stands in the eyes of the G7 right now?
Well, we're seen as a freeloader, unfortunately. We're seen as a country that isn't serious, where we talk a good fight, but we're not prepared to carry our fair share of the burden.
And so why do you think Canada has fallen so far in foreign policy? Is it simply the defense spending?
Defense spending's down because we are losing all national pride, patriotism. We're getting watered down to being this like weird global nothingness where the Canadian passport doesn't mean anything. There's no national identity. Why would you join the army to protect Canada as it's continuing to trend?
It's not simply defense spending. We need to identify where Canada's critical interests lie internationally. And this could be Canada's moment. If you look at how the world changed after the Russian invasion of Ukraine, the 3 F's, food, fuel, fertilizer, Canada has in abundance. The rest of the world needs it. And we should be having a crash program in Canada to bring those resources to the world. To give, for example, an alternative to the Germans, the Koreans, the Japanese and others, to having to subsidize Putin's war or having to buy energy from dictatorships.
That all of that money from that production could be coming to Canada if we axed the tax. Buy your shirts down below. The fact is we are not globally competitive, and we have a government that is punishing all of those industries just mentioned to the point where we could be an economic powerhouse. We're never going to be a military powerhouse. But if our GDP started exploding from all of the commodities that we're able to produce and we became a productive country again, then yeah, increasing defense spending now becomes more plausible. But when you look at it like this, it's like, yeah, we have left the 3 F's, as he said, all on the table. And that's because our leader is another F.
Food, we have a tremendous potential. And it's both an opportunity for Canada and an obligation for us to do what we can to contribute to the rest of the world, to security, including national security.
Talk to me a little bit about this open letter that you penned to the Prime Minister, what you said in it, and why you think that advice is not being taken.
I wrote to the Prime Minister at the end of last year to make the point that this same point, that this could be Canada's moment, but that increasingly we're being seen as unserious in the world, that we're more interested in good feelings than we are in good results in terms of our contribution to the world. And that it's critical for us, if we're going to be taken seriously, to demonstrate in our actions and not just in our words that we're prepared to act. That includes in the defense of Canada. When you contract out your defense to someone else, you're not a sovereign country anymore. You're a protectorate.
I don't have to tell you that,
Yeah, but that's sort of the agreement that we have with America. It's unspoken, but it's why we give them deals on a lot of things. And they are, of course, economically they're a powerhouse, so we want to keep them happy as well and all that. But it's a bit of an unspoken rule that they're kind of carrying the ball for us, and we know it. But the bigger thing is, as I said, this is Canada's moment, and I've screamed about it in other videos. We could be absolutely crushing. Right now, we're being laughed at by other nations, not taken seriously because we care more about feelings, about wasted, unproductive, parasitic, disgusting spending on the most nonsense things. We have one of the worst leaders of all time. Maybe the worst in Canadian history, that's for sure, who's literally running Canada into the ground when we could be crushing. This could go down as one of the biggest missed opportunities in Canadian history, from the Russian war and then us not capitalizing on that.
When you're in government, as you have been, you've got to balance foreign with domestic issues. The Prime Minister is under a lot of pressure here at home.
Because he
both
sucks.
From opponents and supporters. How much does he have to balance what he needs to deal with domestically with also looking globally?
governing is all about making choices and looking at where the national interest lies. And certainly government needs to set priorities in terms of where it's doing its spending. What we've been doing is, although we keep on using the word invest, we've been spending money that disappears the day in which the check is written. And what we need to be doing is putting the money in places where there's a genuine return, either economically or in terms of our impact in the world and Canada's positioning. We can do that. And we need to focus as well, instead of taxing and spending, instead of over-regulating the economy, we need to have a strategy for growth in Canada. We cannot borrow our way to prosperity. We have to have genuine growth, and we have to set priorities.
Yep, right now, nation built on debt, not producing anything. And like I've said it before, and we should have started a drinking game. Every time the freaking liberals say invest, we just know they mean spend. And he said it exactly how I've always been saying it. The check is written, that money disappears. There's no ROI. It's not investing. It is spending. Tax and spend. So when we have the opportunity for all of those dollars to go to our potential commodities, which we have in abundance, we could actually be getting ROI.
And so should one of those priorities be meeting the NATO spending target? And do you see that ever happening, in the immediate future here?
Should it happen? Yes, of course it should happen. Will it happen in the immediate future? No, it won't. And I think everyone understands, including our NATO allies, that you can't achieve that overnight. But even when you listen to the government, the words that they use, such as on a path towards, isn't the same thing as saying we're going to keep our commitment. What people are looking for is a firm commitment to Canada to do what we said we were going to do.
Oh, wow. We want Trudeau to do what he said he's going to do? Never. That guy has not followed through on anything that is actually productive that he said he was going to do. But his nonsense plans, he certainly follows through on. Don't forget to get the Axe Attack shirt. I'm a real estate agent. Click the link below. Thank you guys so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. I did an economic one for you guys today, so you didn't have to see Trudeau or hear him. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and have a great rest of your day.